Welcome to another episode of the Burnt Chef Journal, hosted by myself, Chris Hall, the founder of the Burnt Chef Project. This week's guest is Ross, also known as the Cotswold's nutrition chef, who joins us to talk about his experiences through hospitality, but he's also talking to us about his take on mental health, well-being, open company cultures, and also gives us information about what he's learned over his journey becoming to be a nutrition coach. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode.
Lamb Weston are your partner in potatoes. We're a leading global frozen potato manufacturing business with a wealth of experience in offering a portfolio of high-end and quality products on a consistent basis. We supply the pub, casual dining, QSR sectors. We believe in wellbeing through potatoes, and we are very proud to support the Burnt Chef Project, here to offer our support and help for those that need it and any solutions that you need for you and your business.
Yeah, so obviously my name's Ross. I've been obviously a chef for 15 plus years. I don't want to sort of say how old I am, sort of like, but yeah, I started off as probably most chefs in the country, like pot washing, going into sort of the local restaurant. I was quite fortunate to start in a Michelin star restaurant as pot washing. My mum was like good friends with her son-in-law, who used to be the sous chef there, and I was never wanting to be a chef. Like, that was sort of not in my mindset to be a chef. I was quite sort of good at rugby. Unfortunately, injury sort of took its toll, and blew my shoulder out twice. So obviously, time to obviously rehabilitate and things like that wasn't the greatest time. And as you do when you're young, you sort of listen to your parents as much as you don't want to at the time, but you obviously you do. And she said, you obviously need to a plan B sort of thing. Obviously you need to work, you need to have sort of a little bit of money coming in. So she got me sort of obviously the job. Obviously just like Friday and Saturdays, just doing the pot washing, and then from there I was just sort of like pretty much hooked, really. Seeing the whole team come together to dress a plate of food that was going out of a restaurant, and people buying that sort of food, and it was just amazing to see how they were talking to each other, how they're communicating, and it reminisced like with me, obviously with rugby, because it's a big team sport, and if one player's down, you sort of come together to get him back up and running again. And that's what I saw in kitchens, and sort of went from there, really.
Yeah, I mean, I up until very recently, I played rugby as well. I mean, to be fair, I started quite late, at about 25, but
Okay.
I played up until just over a year ago, and I snapped the tendon straight clean off the bone, so my bicep went shooting up into my armpit.
Nice.
Yeah, I know, but rugby is, and I think you've hit the nail on the head. Rugby, I've always said it would be great to get a team of chefs to play rugby, because that camaraderie and that you literally putting your body on the line for someone else.
Yeah.
Because they're your mates. You don't want to let the team down. You literally will throw yourself in front of a 20-stone prop in order to stop them from dropping a ball over the line. But it's the same sort of mentality about watching each other's backs and making sure that you're there to achieve the goal together.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, having obviously I've sort of been quite fortunate. The teams that I've been in, obviously in kitchens, have not been more than 10 to 12 chefs in the kitchen. So it's been sort of pretty much like a rugby team, really. I've sort of like mates I've gone to London and things like that, and worked in the big hotels, and they've got teams of like 50, 60, 70 chefs. I'm like, that to me already is just like, tearing my brain apart, all that to sort of concentrate, because, as a senior chef in any kitchen, you become like a bank, a psychiatrist, the mum, the father, the babysitter, the bodyguard, and all these things. And that's before you've even started even doing the job that you're actually paid to do, and that's cook. So it's quite sort of full on when you sort of start, stepping up the ladder and things like that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's massively, and you've got such a wide range of skill sets that you need to learn and develop over time within the role as well. It's not just a case of right, you
Yeah,
can pick up a knife and off you go. In the same way
yeah,
as a sommelier or a team lead isn't just going to be able to know the menu inside out and be able to
yeah,
speak to
exactly.
customers. It's a juggling
Mm,
all of these different things, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. It's sort of like, sort of full on, and it can be quite sort of daunting as well. Especially if you've just sort of got to that point in your career of your first junior sous chef job, or a sous chef job, and you think, right, I've got to sort of step up now. And sometimes you don't always have that um, sort of that guidance from above. They just sort of think, right, you can cook, you can run a section, you can run a service, or right, he's ready. And that's not what it's necessarily down to. You still need that sort of, not saying a physical arm around you, but you still see that sort of that safety wing to sort of like help and support you and grow. Um, you
Mm.
know, I've been sort of listening to, I've pretty much sort of listened to all the podcasts you've done so far, and ones that sort of like really sort of stuck to me, like really, it's like Sat Baines, Nathan Outlaw, and guys like that, and even listening to them and how their journeys have gone. They're two chefs that I've sort of like grew up sort of watching and thinking, right, how amazing they are, and the food and things like that, and how they talk now, especially with Sat now, like saying he's got a nutritionist, like him and his wife, and how they look after their staff, and doing this 4 days a week, and eating right, saying you can't have the same sort of starches or the carbohydrates in the same week. Be varied, be creative with the staff food. And I think that's what sort of what boils down to. Is having that nurturing to go down the right sort of channel, but also let them go down the wrong channel, because that's the only way they're going to learn. But sort of like help them with it as well, not just sort of like scream and shout at them. It's like, right, you've done this wrong. Like the food's crap, the staff food's rubbish, and all it does is just sort of belittles that individual, and it, like, to the other point, just makes them angry with them for themselves as well, and then start looking at the chef like what an absolute knob that I'm working for. Do you know what I mean? But how they put it across was just like, straight, on the nail, really.
Yeah, yeah. It's an interesting point. It's one that I want to spend a little bit more time looking at some stage in the future, whereby
Yeah,
how do we as an industry, and certainly as leaders within the industry as well, how do we provide the right amount of room for people to build their resilience through mistakes, without stepping in and worrying about the service going to pot, and then
yeah,
also on the vice versa, like how do we also know when to stop manhandling as well? I guess, I mean, they're two very much the same thing, but failure or mistakes are only failures if you don't learn from them, if they happen time and
yeah,
time and time and time again. But without
yeah,
that happening, you've got no room to grow. You're not going to stretch yourself. You're not going to learn
yeah,
how to
yeah,
cope with those things. And I think we've
yeah.
got a lot of that in the industry at the moment, haven't we, really?
Oh yeah, 100% agree. Like, yeah, but I think what it's sort of, I mean, don't get me wrong. I've been in situations where, I've sort of lost my cool. With individuals and stuff. I remember sort of one time, and I mean, I just took on my first ever junior sous chef job in Derby of all places. I left a pretty top end restaurant up in sort of towards Leeds, and I remember like literally ripping the shit out of this guy because I didn't have the right enough mushrooms for the dish. Because it was like a ratatouille, sort of harlequin ratatouille around the plate, and he didn't cook enough mushrooms for me, and I just over a mushroom. Like, thinking back now, I'm thinking, what an idiot! Why have you just lost your cool over a mushroom?
Mm.
One, it's going to sort of belittle the guy in front of the rest of the team, and two, it was an open kitchen as well, so obviously all the customers, I'd say probably most of them are thinking, look at that guy, like how he's speaking to his staff. And then obviously some are looking like, oh yeah, the chef's sort of kicking on, like, look, this is insane. But it's not the case, because you've just ruined the service. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're on the back foot now, and you've got more more pressure on your shoulders as leading the team because you've just ripped into someone, because now he's thinking, not that he doesn't care, but he's going to be less thinking, right, we're in the shit, we need to push on together. He's like, well, no, he's just screamed at me. I'm going to let him sort it out. He's the sous chef. He can deal with it. Do you know what I mean? And I think it comes down to as well is having, when you're going through these stages, is having, your mentors as you're going up through the ladder, and them understanding how they manage it. Are they being educated the right way and things like that? And a lot of the guys you've had on the podcast have said, like, he went through that sort of like, I think it was Luke, was it? Talking about like the Ramsey sort of scene, screaming, shouting, things like that. And I even thinking back, like, when I was sort of like 17, 18, I think, oh, this guy's amazing. Look at him, he's like, everyone's sort of working together. But in a way, like, you could now sort of think like he's gave these guys a bollocking because it's for a reason. Do you know what I mean? It's never not been for a reason that you can sort of see, but obviously there's got to be a different way of getting the better out of it, out of the individual. Do you know what I mean? Like for me in general, I used to love, not so I love getting bollockings, but it was sort of set me to a point where, right, you've given me a bollocking because I've messed up, right? I'm going to prove you wrong, that I can do this better. So that gave me a drive to go better. Do you know what I mean? Other people, you give them a bollocking and they just sulk for the rest of the service, and you're like, come on, and then they just sort of like dragging their feet through service, which, that's never a good thing either, because that just makes the whole team not come together. And then you start getting resentment, and then all sorts sort of start happening, really.
Yeah, massively so. And it's about, it's been mentioned time and time again on this podcast. It's about understanding your team as individuals. And, for someone like yourself, being like, look, pull your shit together. This isn't good enough.
Yeah.
That could be and similarly to me, if someone said that to me, I'd be like, right, you fucker, I'm going to do this properly now. But then also on the flip side, you catch me on a bad day and you talk to me like that, I'll be like, well, fuck it then. I'm not bothered today. And it's about understanding what works for your team as a motivator and what doesn't, and also knowing where the line is as well. Because at some stage, bollocking people just to be able to boost your ego and make you look better within that environment is, as you say, it's damaging the kitchen culture, it's damaging your workplace culture, and it's impacting the entire business and making your job twice as hard.
I mean, that's that. Like, again, like, spot on there. Like, it's just, I think sort of there needs to be a way of, I mean, also, nowadays you get these chefs that are sort of coming through and like, they want the 50, 60 grand, salaries, they want to be a head chef at like 21, 22. Okay, there's going to be an odd occasion where you get them individual chefs that are actually just naturally talented, but it's not all about the cooking. It's got to understand like how you run that kitchen, like how do you do your budgets, how do you sort of pull a service around when you're like literally everyone's in the shit, they're so behind, like the tickets are just come flying in, complaints after complaints and things like that. And as a head of a kitchen or a head chef or a sous chef, you've got to take control and understand that and sort of keep it on a balance where you don't lose it, because once you lose it, it's like a domino effect, isn't it? Really, it just goes knocking on, and before you know it, you're backed up, and by the time you finish service, it's like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and that's before you've even cleaned down and wrapped your fridges up. Do you know what I mean? So, and then your team are thinking like, what the hell am I doing this for? So I think there's got to be a way where nurturing these guys, and I think as well, like, a lot of companies like employ young chefs because they're not prepared to pay the money for them as well. Do you know what I mean?
We've got into a habit, and I'm not, this isn't to say that the whole industry is like this, but there's certainly a large proportion of the industry that think, well, actually, if I can save on labour costs by employing someone at 20k a year when it should be 25 or 28 or 30k a year, then we save money. But what you're doing is you're taking people who perhaps don't necessarily have the skill sets to be in those roles, or or have more skill sets, and they're only there for a short period of time, and they're probably not efficient enough for the business, and they're not prepared to stay with you because you're not willing to, value them as human beings and pay them at least the right livable wage.
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
it's
I mean,
it's a fine balancing act, isn't it? Really.
I mean, yeah, it is pretty sort of fine balance. And don't get me wrong, like, I've been in meetings where, like, 1 month it'd be, a budget of, like, say 30 grand or something like that, and you've come under budget sort of thing. So you're like, right, okay, I've got a bit of extra sort of wiggle room for next month, and then they cut it again. The industry is very sort of penny pinching. But what that does, it sort of dilutes the standard, especially in the high end, like hotels and restaurants like that, and it dilutes the standard because you haven't got the money to pay for the right produce that you want. You haven't got the money to pay for the correct chefs you want, and like the skill set. Skill set can be obviously learned along the way, but it's to have that willingness to learn. Do you know what I mean? And I think sort of companies now, they're just sort of more worried about how much money they can put in their back pocket than actually sort of like, I've got this team, they're a great set of guys or girls, and we're going to go places. We'll pay them right, look after them, feed them correctly, and sort of go from there, really.
Yeah, massively so. So talk to me a little bit about sort of your journey from where we left off, and sort of why specifically you wanted to have a chat on a podcast that sort of focuses on well-being and awareness and culture.
I mean, what I've sort of seen so far, Chris, is it's literally sort of hit home sort of more closely to me. Going back a few years ago now, it was on a Valentine's service, and was slightly understaffed. The head chef had to come in on his day off. I think a couple of guys sort of walked out like a couple of days beforehand, so we were sort of a bit under the cuff, and it was busy as you can imagine. And I just collapsed outside of the kitchen, like in the sort of corridor. Woke up with obviously two paramedics around me, and so obviously whisked me off to hospital. Head chef was like, take a week off, like, stuff like that, really. And it was all down to sort of like not looking after myself. I was only 25 at the time. I thought, quite fit, young. I could sort of like run through walls as every young chef does. They think like they're invincible. They're sort of like Hulk, and that wasn't the case. Sort of, I wasn't sort of eating the right food. I was drinking sort of like Lucozades, like coffee that what we used to make in a pan on the stove and just let it ticking over. So that by the time the last coffee was in, it was more like stock syrup and things like that, really. And it sort of started off from there, really. And obviously with my rugby background as well, I was like, well, if I don't sort of look after myself now, like in the later years, this is just going to sort of go completely wrong. And then obviously later on, a few years, I mean, not so sort of long ago, like whether you call it, a breakdown or anything like that, but I hit a wall where nothing just wouldn't go right. Whatever I tried to do, nothing would go right. I was arguing with people, tearing relationships apart, and just sort of constantly like really angry. Letting it go on my team members, and they're sort of looking like, well, what is going on? Like, he was fine a week ago, now he's like kicking off every single minute of the day. And having that sort of that complete sort of strange mindset of how do I get myself out of this? Like, I was in such a pretty dark hole, and all your sort of like your default setting is like work, like work harder, and it was just making me worse and worse and worse. And obviously listening to the guys you've had on so far, it's such a massive thing, mental health, where it affects people in completely different ways. Like, you could be, Sat's a big guy, he goes to the gym, he works out and stuff like that. Nathan's, quite a big guy as well, but it doesn't, mental health doesn't care what sort of size you are, how big your ego is, like how strong you are mentally or physically. It will get you. It doesn't matter how you look at it, it will get you at some point. And was it 1 out of 10 men in the country will at some point have this sort of depression or mindset in their lifetime. Do you know what I mean? And it's only getting worse. And I think as obviously the latter sort of years of coming in and catering and things like that, like people are just sort of willing to sort of say, "Oh, just get on with it," or "cheer up," or "get on with it," and that's not how it works, And I'm sort of talking from my personal experience, my opinion, and things like that, because all that done is just irritate the hell out of me. Do you know what I mean? And you're like, well, don't tell me to fucking cheer up, like I'm fine. Do you know what I mean? And then straight away you got your back up, and then you're going back at them again, and it's just a very vicious circle. But yeah, like definitely, like mental health has to be sort of addressed like very quickly, because unfortunately, I've had I've worked in teams where chefs have like passed away and things like that, and it's just not right. Do you know what I mean? Like these are like talented, like good guys and girls, and you don't want to lose them to an industry of pressure, because whether it's a customer is walked in say like, I don't like my steak like that. Okay, that's fine, but don't sort of like get the waiters to come back and sort of like throw it in your face and say this is shit, this is crap, because that's not what you want to. You'll stand on your feet to make someone's dinner, lunch, and breakfast, whichever way, wherever you're working, to the best of your ability. It doesn't give anyone right to sort of rip into someone because it's not to their liking. Do you know what I mean? It's everyone has a different taste. Everyone has a different liking of different things. We do our best as an industry to sort of get that on pinpoint, and a lot of restaurants, a lot of hotels do that. They do sort of like spot on, like get it spot on. But there could be that one day where that chef can have a bad day, or something's happened at home, or his children have been sort of driving him or her mad like all weekend, and you come to work on Monday morning, you're like, thank God, like I'm back at work. But then then you start thinking like, did I do that right the weekend? Is that my fault? And there's a lot of doubt in I think in chefs. At point, it doesn't matter how good you are, there is always that doubt of like, am I doing the best, or am I doing this the right way?
And once you start those thoughts as well, sometimes it's difficult to get off that old train, isn't it, really?
Yeah. It's like a long old train going through like a tunnel that's, you don't really see, a light at the end of it. But yeah, it's quite a very difficult thing to sort of get yourself out of. Like, from my experience, I used to have a blip maybe once a month, like, in a year. But then as I got older, it was getting more and more frequent. And I'm like, well, what's happening? Like, what am I doing different? And at the time, I wasn't doing anything different. I was going to work, working hard, going out seeing friends or socialising, going to eat at restaurants. And there was nothing different that I was doing. It's just I was getting older. So, I think a lot of it as well is your patience does get a lot shorter. When you were younger, you're like, your parents or your boss is like, your patience does get shorter as you get older, and you're like, no, I'm going to be chilled, I'm going to be fine. But it's true. It's I'm not saying it's down to the people being daft or anything like that. I think it's just you as an individual. Your patience is like, I'm old enough now. I'm at that age. I don't really need to listen to this anymore. Do you know what I mean? I've done 15, 16, 20, 30 years in the industry of listening to the same stuff. I'm done with it. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, it's definitely, patience is, not a virtue, as people say. Do you know what I mean? So
it's a learned behavior, one that I'm still getting to grips with myself. It's
yeah.
Patience is being able to know that thought's come into your head and not act on it. Is patience is knowing that your words or your actions can have a negative or a positive consequence, but being able to be patient and see that thought process and see that action out in your head first is
yeah.
yeah. Patience is key,
But
really, isn't it?
I mean, yeah, like totally agree. Again, like it's just, but I think that's only going to come through experience. You can't sort of just give a junior guy or girl say, right, you got to be patient, because whether they understand what patience is, a lot of the time you don't see it. Do you know what I mean? You can sort of like again going back to I lost my temper over a mushroom. Stupid thing as it is, but I didn't have the right skill set to be patient. All I had to do, like what I do now, is like, right, okay, cool. Let's just slow the service down, redo the dish. Do you know what I mean? I've got a minute and a half on the fish, and we'll just do it again. Again, that shows the chef that I'm looking after him or her. We're taking the time to do it right, and that gives them a bit more time to breathe, rather than sort of like, oh my god, the chef's going to scream at me. It's just sort of understanding and recognizing that time, and it's like, right, okay, I need to step in now and sort of slow it down, and then once we're sort of back up on speed again, we can speed it back up again. It's all about controlling that, and you're only going to learn that through experience. That's not that you can't learn that at college, or someone saying to you, you've got to be patient, you got to stay calm, because at a young age you don't know what that is. You don't know what it looks like. You might understand it thinking of it, but you don't know what it looks like.
Yeah, you learn through experience, don't you? And so,
yeah,
having understood a little bit about your journey and sort of what you've been through personally and what you've sort of observed over your time within hospitality, talk to me a little bit more about your path now, because you're a certified nutritional coach as well, are you, or nutritionist?
Yes, yeah. No, so I'm a nutrition coach. So I haven't got obviously a degree in obviously nutrition, but there's sort of very sort of basic that comes around nutrition coaching. So obviously you learn about your fats, your carbs, and how your minerals, how your macros, and your weight gain, your weight loss sort of like works. But my scope of practice is like, I can't say to you, Chris, you come to me and say, well, I've got a liver disorder, I need to eat like this. Like, I'm like, okay, that's fine, but I'd have to speak to the doctor, or your doctor will speak to me and say, Ross, he's got this. These are the foods I recommend. Can you create food around this? I'm like, yeah, that's not a problem. So it's the scope of practice between a nutrition coach and nutritionist. I don't have the authority to say or diagnose and say, right, you need to eat this to get better.
Okay, so you act, you're able to act based on information provided, but you're not necessarily. And whilst you might learn through experience, you're not able to clinically diagnose. In the same way that I can't diagnose someone with depression or anxiety, or say that they're they've got specific mental illness, because I'm not a doctor.
Yeah.
I just speak from personal experience and education.
Exactly, yeah. But yeah, I mean, I passed that a couple of months ago, which is obviously probably one of the hardest exams I think I've ever done. A lot of the wording, I'm like, I don't even know what that means. So obviously, I'm quite dyslexic as well, so obviously makes that a little bit more difficult for myself. But yeah, obviously, what I wanted to sort of like do is literally sort of get people to understand, you have to eat. I mean, it doesn't how you look at it. You have to eat and nourish your body, and giving the understanding of what you put in your body, and the amounts you put into your body is how your body reacts to what it needs to do. Do you know what I mean? It's to try and make them small changes to help that individual be a better person. Whether it's sort of helping the wife or girlfriend around the house, or whether it's helping they want to play a bit more around the garden or in the fields with their children, be a bit more helpful with them. It's making them little changes to sort of hopefully be a better person and be a lot healthier person. Definitely for myself, I've sort of looked into how vegans eat and sort of vegetarians eat. There's a lot of points that I don't really agree with, but also from a chef point of view, you sort of look at it like, well, how can I turn that into a nice meal or a nice sort of dish that I would enjoy? Yesterday I found some chickpea rice. So basically, it looks like what's it called? It's like little pasta rice. I forgot the name of it now. Yeah, also pasta. Yeah, and it looks like that. And I was planning about it yesterday, and for what it is, it's tasty. Not for me really, but for a vegetarian or a vegan that doesn't eat any dairy or anything like that, it's good in protein, and it gives the right minerals and nutrients that the body needs. So yeah, it's just sort of trying to get people to understand, ploughing in crisps and chocolate and fizzy drinks and rubbish food, in the long run, it's going to do you more damage than good. So I'm sort of trying to like change that in the way I look at food.
What's been the biggest thing that you've learned since studying and learning what you've learned? Like what's for you personally, what's been the like, bloody hell, I didn't realize that moment?
I think a lot of the bullshit that's surrounded by nutrition. There's so much like crap out there. Like, it's quite understandable how people can actually get misunderstood of what they're supposed to be doing. Even sort of with personal trainers, I've been quite fortunate. The guys that I've got around me they've done their time. They've learnt the craft. Like they've gone through the process of injuring themselves or doing the wrong things and learning from them. They've done the time understanding how things work. But there's a hell of a lot of crap out there where people are going to get to a point of like hurting themselves, especially in sort of like PT training, and people that are sort of so-called food experts, if you want to call them that, sort of trying to diagnose, if you eat this will help this. Like, people just sort of look what the cosmetic is of someone, thinking, if I eat the right food for this for 6 weeks, this is what I'm going to look like. That's not how it works. With my clients that I deal with now, is I speak to them as like you a recipe, which is quite a sort of strange way of calling someone a recipe. But if you break it down, everyone is a recipe, because every recipe is different. And if you understand your own recipe, you can make better changes to become a better recipe and a better outcome.
I think I've got the concept of that, but like, so you're talking about, just explain a little bit more about everyone's recipe. I'm intrigued. Can you highlight on that?
Yeah. So if you sort of break down, sort of like if you're making bread, for instance, in sort of the cold mornings, what you've got to take into account, a lot of the time it won't take all the water. Because obviously the moisture in the air, where you're working, it's a cold environment, so there's going to be more moisture in the air in the room. So if you sort of break it down, everyone's recipe is, if I give you a plan to follow, it ain't going to be the plan that I would follow, because different things will affect me in different ways. Like for you, for instance, when you're playing rugby, for instance, like, would you eat heavy food the night before, or would you have breakfast in the morning?
Yeah, usually I preferred to play on an empty stomach, because I would eat breakfast in the morning, but if I had a game at say 12, 1 o'clock, I would not. Yeah. I'd not have lunch, because I would just be useless. I'd be a sack of spuds on the pitch.
Yeah. So like for me, like I still play. I can't have anything until after the game. I'll eat pretty heavy the night before, but I won't eat anything until after the game. So that's sort of what I mean about people being a recipe. Like there's different elements of your own recipe that affects you in different ways. If that makes sense.
So yeah, about variables. So yeah, so I understand the concept now. It's an important concept. So I mean, one of the general misconceptions, and to summarize, as you said, and I totally agree with this, is that nowadays we're in a culture where you see so many diet books and you see so many workout plans that are one size fits all. You do this, you cut your carbs down to 30% and your fat's up to 60% of your diet, and you'll
Yeah.
be fine. But that
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
work. Like, for example, I'm quite intolerant to carbs, in terms of if I eat carbs, my body grabs hold of them and turns them straight into sugar and fat.
Yeah. Yeah.
But on the flip side of that, if I cut carbs out, I lean down quite quickly. But then that's not the same for everyone. Some people can't, some people's bodies need the carbs and they metabolize it in a different way, don't they?
Yeah, yeah. But also as well, like, there's a lot of fad diets like keto and all that sort of stuff where you don't have carbs, you have the bare minimum of fats and things like that. And, it's not, the human body is not necessarily made or built up the way that these diets have been sort of like come about, because you need like carbs, you need sugars, you need the fats, you need the minerals. These are all sort of important stuff that you need your body to sort of maintain, like to live. Do you know what I mean? So if you start sort of playing about, with these sort of chemistry sort of balance and equations, you're going to start sort of seeing some really sort of strange health not benefits, some health bad points as you sort of get older and things like that.
So putting this into sort of real world context, in terms of how we look after ourselves during busy service, and what the best advice, without trying to say that there is a one size fits all solution, but what's the best sort of advice that you've got for those who are looking at taking a step in the right direction in terms of looking at their diet, giving themselves the right energy that they need, especially as we start to look at relaunching back into the industry?
I think sort of from my point of view is literally like strip it right back. Like, what can you control? If you can control little aspects of your day-to-day living, then that's a bonus. That's a positive in the right direction. So if you if you go to bed, for instance, and you're on your phone for an extra 20 minutes, that's going to affect your sleeping pattern, because obviously the way the phones and the blue light affects your brain. It's like having a busy brain when you going to sleep. If you sort of put that into context, that's like sort of coming out of a 100 cover service flat out and you're just going straight to bed. You can't do that. You need time to sort of like chill and relax and sort of bring your body back down to some sort of normality for yourself. So if you sort of change these little aspects of like drinking water before you go to bed, having water when you wake up, straight away you're hydrating your body, so it's a kick start to your morning. Then go into sort of don't rush out with no breakfast, or don't try and skip lunch or skip a meal because you haven't got time. I think that's one of the biggest things that people say, I haven't got time, which I could sort of see how they can say that, but you have to make time. You have to make time for your health. If you've got time to sort of like go to the toilet, that's still making time for a bodily function. So you've got time to make these little changes for yourself to be a healthier person. Because if you don't make them, again, you're going to go down the wrong road, and sort of health problems are going to start sort of come up very quickly, and they'll happen when you're sort of least expect it. Do you know what I mean? So it's making these small little changes for the better, and do a bit of more research of what you're putting into your body as well, because it's all fuel at whatever way you look at it. But be clever who you follow, who you get the information from, because again, there's a lot of as you call it, sort of bullshitters in this trade, because everyone affects what they want to look like. And going back to sort of, if you eat this or if you drink this, you're going to look like this. It's not going to happen. It doesn't matter how you look at it; it just won't work. Be clever of who you follow and what you're reading, and don't just sort of like jump on the wagon and say, well, if he or she looks like that, it's going to work for me. It's just not going to happen.
Are there any particular resources that you'd be able to suggest for people that are sort of ones that you found to be a little bit more trustworthy?
There's one. Obviously, he's originally from London. It's called James Smith. I'm not too sure if you've sort of seen him on sort of social media. He's very, very, very knowledgeable. He does sort of come out and sort of like fronts a lot of bullshitters out. Like just sort of about basically like whatever he's seen and been corrected, he'll sort of recorrect them, say, well, that's not how it works, and things like that, really. So he's a good one to sort of to go and check out. There's another one I'm actually sort of reading at the moment. It's called the Nutrition Bible. It's by Dal Pinnock, the medicinal chef, and the book's all about sort of like different aspects of like diabetes. One I was just reading about as well before I jumped on with you, Chris, is depression and things like that. How different foods affect what sort of foods you need to be eating and things like that. There's a lot of different sort of books and sort of stuff to read about, but have a look at what their background has been. Don't sort of just sort of look at what they look like. Have a look where they're trained and how long they've been doing their qualifications for, and where they've qualified from as well. So
it's important, especially as we're all trying to make ourselves, we're bred in this culture to try and make ourselves look as good as possible to other people. And what we really need is some authenticity and some people to be real and say, do you know what? I don't have a clue what I'm doing. This has worked for me, and I'll share it. As opposed to trying to say that you've got 20 years experience in something. And I think authenticity is going to be the thing over the next 5 years that people really resonate with and get on board with. I was chatting to a mate of mine last night. It was a military man. He's just come out of the military. He's looking for work. And he said to me, oh, like nowadays when you look for jobs, apparently like the computer systems look for keywords. And if you don't get keywords in your CV, then they chuck it out, and they doesn't even get to the employer. I said, well, have you thought about doing a video? And he was like, oh, mate, all I do is I'm a military guy. I said, I'm not good at talking to the camera, and what have I'm not going to come across well. And I said, yeah, but at the moment, people gravitate towards authenticity, right? So if you jump on the camera and say to someone, like, look, I thought this would be a much better idea than to give you an idea of who I am than just writing it down. I'm not comfortable doing this. This is way out of my comfort zone, but here we go. And here's like, I'm a family man, this, that, and the other, but like almost calling out the elephant in the room. I said, whoever's on the other end is going to go, God, yeah, that must have been tough. And I wouldn't have been comfortable doing that either. But obviously he's shown me that he's vulnerable, and you're more likely to resonate with people, aren't you? Just show a bit of normality, a bit of humanness about you.
Yeah, I think so. Like, that's a word. You're asking the wrong person to come up with certain to that. But I think like totally agree with that. It's like people sending CVs and like I've worked at sort of say Hospital Road for 10 years, or I've worked for Market Clear White for 15 years, or whatever the case may be. And at some point of them coming in, doing trial and then working, at some point a story would come up, or someone would know that person and say, and it'll more like be the head chef's mate or a friend of his mate say, oh, have you got Chris working here? So, oh yeah, he used to work at Ramsay's. No, he didn't. Well, he said on his CV he's worked there for like 10 years. He's like, no, he come in for a trial, that was it. And there's a lot of bullshitters that sort of like extend what their CV say. So like like your friend from the military, like if you can see a video of someone saying, right, I've worked at Marco's for 2 years. I went for a trial for Ramsay's. Wasn't what I wanted. Like I think I'm not quite there yet. People can see that from facial expressions and things like that, and see like, wow, hang on, this guy's actually telling the truth. Do you know what I mean? You can sort of hide behind a CV, but you can't sort of necessarily hide behind an actual video of you being honest. and being like, original, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. And it's a question we get asked a lot when we train in colleges. It's like, I want to work at a particular place. How do I get there?
Yeah,
And, it's through grit, it's through determination, but it's also about doing
yeah,
something different. And,
yeah,
not to get too off topic about video recording yourself and going for jobs, but ultimately, as it's been discussed on this podcast before, CVs are genuinely just a waste of paper sometimes, because it's not about where you come from. It's not about, what accolades you've worked with or who
yeah,
you've worked with. It's about your ability to learn, your eagerness to develop yourself and to be a team player. And, if you can portray that and you can come across as someone who's willing to get stuck in and, develop skill sets that they're not so strong in, and utilize skill sets that they do have,
yeah,
then where does it matter?
yeah,
Like, it doesn't matter
yeah,
at
yeah,
all. It's about the person, and it's not about the piece of paper that they've written, because
yeah.
anyone could write a cracking CV, as you said.
Exactly. Yeah. But
But we've,
I think as well as like with individuals, like I've been in a situation where chefs have come in and sort of like they've said they've one place, and anyone that's actually quite clued up and sort of like see the bullshit, like I can sort of normally say, well, hang on, you've said you're good at this, but I can see you're not good at it. So you either come clean and I can help you with it, or you're just going to carry on sort of digging yourself a hole. And whether it be myself or one of the junior sort of seniors would be like, well, I'm just going to sort of watch you sort of dig yourself your own hole, and sort of you're not going to get anywhere. So it's better to come clean and be honest about it and say, look, chef, like I sort of bullshit a little bit, and then you can sort of rebuild again. I say, okay, if you're not good at pastry, just tell me you're not good at pastry. I'm not saying I'm the best pastry chef in the world, but what I've learned and where I've worked and how I've learned that pastry sort of detail, I can give that to you. And then you might sort of like think like, oh wow, this is amazing. And you might sort of take it on. It's like, well, Ross has shown me how to do these pastry skills. Like, I really love the way he teaches, or the way he's sort of making these things happen. I want to sort of move on to pastry now and sort of go somewhere else and learn pastry. So that's more sort of education on a section where originally he bullshitted. Do you know what I mean? Or she bullshitted.
yeah, but it also, it's worth bearing in mind that the company culture has to be open enough for that person to feel comfortable. Like a lot,
Yeah,
you also, on the flip side, playing devil's advocate, there's a lot of businesses out there whereby if you're not selling yourself, then you might not have an opportunity. And I think it's, being able to have that workplace and go, do you know what? Actually, here I am. I'm vulnerable, whether it be my mental health, whether it be my physical health, whether it be my skill sets.
yeah,
I could do with some help because I'm eager to learn. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier about, providing you are keen to learn and develop and to push on. And it's only a good thing, irrespective of your background or what, what you are or who you are as a person.
yeah.
So Ross, to draw this to sort of quite a neat close, was there anything in particular that you wanted to sort of add before I ask you the end of show question?
I think sort of like for me, sort of listening to what your podcast and the sort of the guys that you've had on, it's like it's very sort of close to sort of what I've been through, and I've seen at some point what they've been through. Is literally like don't be too scared to open up. There's always going to be someone there that's going to say, well, hang on, he's in a bit of a bad place. What can we do to help him or her? Don't be ashamed to ask for help. Because the worst thing you can do if you don't ask for help and you go further on down the line in more of a darker hole. It's a lot harder to get back out of that hole unless you sort of ask for help sooner rather than later. I'd rather have a conversation with you the day after with a cup of tea rather than going to your funeral. Do you know what I mean? If we can sort of change the mentality of people looking at like, don't sort of give them a hard time because they can't do it. Again, people learn different ways. If you can sort of save someone from going down that really dark path, which, you know, I think a lot of chefs have at some point in their career. I think that'd be the better option, and I think the industry would be a lot better off than sort of burning, excuse the punt, burning the chefs that are sort of walking out the industry and going to industries that they're just sort of like, okay, it's a job, money. Because I think we have lost a hell of a lot of talented guys and girls in the industry down to not being looked after.
Yeah, definitely. I dread to think how many. And ultimately, like, working in this trade, it's a passion. I was chatting to a chef the other day who was applying for jobs at Amazon and whatnot. And I was sort of, whilst I was chatting to him, I said to him, like, why are you looking at this? He's like, oh, you know, hospitality, I've been a chef for a long time. It's not good for my health and all this other stuff. And then as he was talking, he opened up his phone and I happened to catch a picture of him and his old brigade. And I said, oh, is that your old team? It's like, oh, yeah, you know, great bunch of guys. You know, we had the best time working there. And I'm like, but if you know, you're not talking about Amazon or Tesco's the way you're talking about working in a kitchen environment and with your brigade, or in, you know, with a creative flair. So, you know, that says to me that perhaps it's not necessarily the trade that you don't want anymore. It's that particular workplace or that particular environment. So, you know, why not look at, you know, I mean, like things like nursing homes tend to, you know, chefs scoff when you say, like, do you want to work at a nursing home? Like, no, why would I want to work there? But again, though, that's a completely, you know, it's a completely different environment whereby you, one, get a work-life balance, and two, you're not necessarily focusing on the plating of stuff, but you're looking at the nutritional value. So, like, people, for example, who've got dementia aren't able to swallow, and so as a result of that, you have to then be quite creative with what you're producing. That's not bland and just brown stuff on a plate, but actually, you know, you can use some of the SOSA or the modern gastronomy ingredients to be able to use different techniques to produce vibrant colors, you know, loads of flavors, and it's also palatable for those individuals. So the industry is so wide and vast that there's so many opportunities out there for anyone that perhaps has got to that point in career where they think, I don't want to work in this environment anymore, but I still want to be a chef. There's so many opportunities out there.
I think so. Like, going on with the nursing home sort of thing. Like, I remember having a conversation only last year with a guy. He works in, I think, like a group of them, and basically he was sort of dealing with a client of his where I think she had cancer or something like that, and basically she couldn't taste anything. So the flavors that he had to sort of come out with had to be so punchy that she could sort of understand what sort of flavor she's eating, and you know, to get like, and that's pretty much what the fundamental of being a chef is. Like, if you can get the best flavor out that ingredient, whether it's a carrot, a potato, or anything simple, if you can get the best flavor that you can possibly get out of that's your job's done. Like, you don't need to start messing about with anything. And I think that's what the issue. I think, like, as you said, like, with a lot of chefs, it's like, oh, the industry, it's shit. It's not what it used to be, and you know, I can't be bothered anymore. I don't think it's that. I think they just lose the burning sensation inside them to think, right, oh my God, I've just made this beautiful soup for this patient or client that she can't really taste anything. And you could just see on her face or his face where I've enjoyed that. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's what it's all about, cooking. It's making memories and making people's faces just light up and think, oh my God, what have I just eaten? That was fucking amazing. Do you know what I mean? That's what it's about. That's all what it's about, is making memories, and good memories.
Yeah, you're very right. Very right. So, Ross, if you were to give some advice to your 18-year-old version of yourself, what would you say?
Oh, that's quite a hard one. I think sort of like learn your craft. Don't sort of jump on the ladder and move up as quick as possible, because you'll always get to a point where someone will find you out. Learn your craft, work in the places where you want to work. Don't just sort of follow, this restaurant's amazing. Find a chef that's going to nurture you and look after you. And for me personally, from my opinion, like what I have done and had chefs look after me, I think that's the main aspect, because then you start learning how to look after your brigade when you get to that point.
Nicely summarised. I like that a lot. Thank you.
No, it is.
Some great advice. Well, Ross, thank you ever so much for taking the time to join us and to speak openly about your own experiences. And it just helps go further the ongoing conversation that we started and developed. And there's loads of useful points on that I think people will be able to benefit from. Yeah, no,
thanks again, Chris, for obviously having me on here, and thanks for accepting obviously when I spoke to you on social. So yeah, it's been really good speaking to you. No, that's brilliant. And Chris, like, you're doing an amazing job as well, getting all these big guys on as well, and sort of getting them to share their experiences, like, because it's only going to go in a good positive way. And if we can get the industry back on track, obviously with all this going on, I think like sort of Sat said in his interview, like, the world's the oyster for this industry. Like, the stars, you can keep going. So
thank you, mate. Cheers for that. Have a good day.
Cheers. Thanks, Chris. Speak to you later.
Speak to you soon.
Bye.
Cheers, mate. Bye.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the Burnt Chef Journal. We'll be back again next week with another episode, but in the meantime, if you wanted to learn more about the Burnt Chef Project, please head over to our website, www.theburntchefproject.com, where we have a range of merchandise which is designed to create awareness. We offer training modules. We also provide support services, and also you'll find access to our online app, which is free to use internationally. Do feel free to give us a follow and a like on social media, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next week.